The sterile scent of antiseptic and damp fur was my constant companion, a familiar comfort in the organized chaos of the clinic. At 24, I was Emerson, a veterinarian whose life felt as meticulously catalogued as the medical charts in my office. My days unfolded with a predictable rhythm: early mornings, challenging cases, the occasional frantic emergency, and then evenings with Liam. He was a good man, steady and kind, and our relationship was a comfortable, well-worn sweater. I thought I knew what happiness felt like, what love meant. I was wrong. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of dreary, overcast day that usually meant a lull in appointments, when she walked in. The bell above the door chimed, a sound usually unnoticed, but this time it seemed to echo, announcing a presence that demanded attention. My head snapped up from the patient chart I was reviewing, and there she was. Piper. Her name, I would learn, was as vibrant and unexpected as her appearance. She had a cascade of dark, wavy hair, so rich it almost seemed to absorb the muted clinic light, tumbling past her shoulders. Her eyes, the color of polished obsidian, held a depth that felt both ancient and playfully modern, drawing you in without apology. She was dressed in tailored black trousers and a silk blouse the color of a stormy sky, an outfit that whispered of quiet luxury and an effortless chic that felt entirely out of place in our modest reception area. She held a carrier with a fluffy Persian cat inside, but my gaze kept returning to her, mesmerized. "Hi there," she said, her voice a low, husky alto that seemed to vibrate through the air. "I have an appointment for Cleo." Piper. My assistant, bless her heart, stammered a greeting, clearly as captivated as I was. I managed to nod, a silent acknowledgement, feeling a strange warmth bloom in my cheeks. It wasn't just her striking looks. There was an aura about her, a confidence that bordered on audacious, a playful glint in her dark eyes that seemed to challenge the very air she breathed. When it was her turn, I ushered her into examination room 3, the familiar routine a welcome anchor in the sudden shift of atmosphere. As I gently retrieved Cleo from her carrier, Piper leaned against the stainless steel counter, her posture relaxed yet radiating an undeniable energy. She watched me, her gaze unblinking, assessing. "You have a very gentle touch," she observed, her voice soft, almost a murmur, as I examined Cleo's pulley white teeth. "Cleo can be quite particular." I offered a small, professional smile. "Most cats are," I replied, trying to keep my voice even, focused on Cleo's gums. I was used to clients complimenting my work, but with Piper, it felt different, imbued with an undercurrent I couldn't quite decipher. It was more than a compliment. It felt like an observation, an intimate one. As I listened to Cleo's heart with my stethoscope, Piper's eyes, those dark, knowing pools, never left my face. I could feel their weight, a tangible presence, and it made the small hairs on my arms stand on end. I shifted slightly, feeling a curious self-consciousness under her scrutiny. "Everything looks healthy, Piper," I said, detaching the stethoscope, my gaze meeting hers for a fleeting second. Her lips curved into a slow, deliberate smile, a small, private gesture that seemed meant only for me. It held a hint of mischief, a suggestion of something unsaid. "I had a feeling she was in good hands," Piper murmured, her voice dropping a fraction, the words hanging in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. Her eyes, those captivating, deep wells, lingered on mine, a silent invitation, a challenge. I felt a blush creep up my neck, a sensation I hadn't experienced since high school. It was an unsettling heat, a disorienting warmth that made me want to fidget, to look away, yet I found myself unable to break contact. There was a pause, a beat in time that stretched, pregnant with unspoken tension. I cleared my throat, forcing myself to professionalism. "Well, that's good news for Cleo then," I managed, busying myself with putting away my instruments. I could still feel her gaze, steady and noticeable. "Indeed," Piper said, her voice softer now. She pushed herself off the counter, moving closer to me as I scribbled notes on Cleo's chart. Her hand, long and slender, briefly brushed my arm as she reached for the carrier. The contact was fleeting, barely there, yet it left a faint tingle, a ghost of a touch that resonated deeper than it should have. She met my gaze again, her smile now a full, confident curve. "Thank you, Dr. Emerson," she said, her voice warm and lingering on my name. "I'll see you soon." And with that, she was gone, leaving behind a faint scent of jasmine and something subtly musky that clung to the air, and a disquieting sense of something shifted within me. The sterile clinic air suddenly felt too thin, too quiet. I stood there for a moment, the pen forgotten in my hand, replaying her words, her smiles, her lingering gaze. My cheeks still felt warm. Liam felt 1,000 miles away. The scent of jasmine and musk lingered in examination room 3 long after Piper and Cleo had departed, a phantom presence that subtly disrupted my focus for the remainder of the day. I found myself replaying our brief interaction, the way her eyes had held mine, the almost imperceptible drop in her voice, the brush of her hand on my arm. Each detail, insignificant on its own, coalesced into a potent memory that refused to dissipate. I mentally chided myself. It was just a client, a beautiful one, yes, but just a client. Days later, the chime above the door announced her return. My head snapped up instinctively, a jolt of something akin to anticipation coursing through me. Piper stood there, her dark hair pulled back in a chic, loose ponytail, a pair of subtle silver hoops gleaming against her skin. Today, she wore a fitted knit dress in a deep forest green that perfectly complemented her dark eyes. She carried the same pet carrier, but this time, Cleo peeked out, looking perfectly content. "Dr. Emerson," she greeted, her smile as captivating as I remembered, a slow, deliberate unveiling that made my breath catch. Cleo needed a quick checkup. Just a little cough. A cough. I knew Cleo's chart inside out. There had been no indication of a cough during our last visit. It was a flimsy excuse, and we both knew it, though neither of us acknowledged it aloud. My assistant, bless her, simply nodded, used to the quirks of our clientele. In the exam room, Piper again leaned against the counter, observing me. This time, her gaze was more direct, less veiled. As I listened to Cleo's chest, trying to ignore the heat I felt under Piper's steady scrutiny, she spoke, her voice a low murmur. "You seem a little distracted today, Dr. Emerson." I nearly dropped my stethoscope. "Just a busy morning, Piper," I lied smoothly, my cheeks flushing. It was true, in part, but the distraction she referred to wasn't the schedule. It was her. I finished my examination, finding Cleo's lungs clear, her breathing perfectly normal. "Cleo seems perfectly fine," I announced, turning to face her, trying to maintain my professional composure. Piper's smile widened, a knowing curve. "Of course. She always thrives under your care." Her eyes, dark and fathomless, met mine, and there was a playful challenge in their depths. Perhaps I just needed an excuse to see you again. The confession, so brazenly delivered, made my heart skip a beat. My carefully constructed professional facade faltered. "Piper," I began, my voice barely above a whisper, unsure how to respond to such a direct statement. She took a step closer, closing the small distance between us. Her hand, warm and light, settled on my arm, just above the elbow. It was a gentle, almost accidental touch, yet it radiated a subtle heat that seeped through my scrub top. "You have such kind eyes, Emerson," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, her gaze intense, searching mine. It wasn't a compliment. It felt like an intimate revelation, a silent declaration that she saw something beyond the doctor, beyond the polite exterior. I pulled my arm away gently, feigning a need to check Cleo's paperwork, my mind racing.
Guilt gnawed at me.
Liam's face flashed in my mind, his steady, loving smile. This was entirely inappropriate. "I really should get back to my other patients," I said, my voice perhaps a little too firm, too hurried. Piper didn't move, her eyes still locked on mine, a hint of amusement playing on her lips. "Of course. Duty calls." She pushed off the counter, moving slowly towards the door, her movements graceful, deliberate. As she reached the doorway, she paused, turning back to me. "You know," she said, her voice a low murmur, "I'm quite new to the area. I don't really know many people. Perhaps you could show me around sometime? Or maybe we could grab a drink. As a thank you for taking such good care of Cleo, of course." Her eyes held a sparkle, daring me to refuse. My pulse quickened. The invitation hung in the air, thick with unspoken possibilities. My first instinct was to decline, firmly. This was crossing a line I had no intention of blurring. But then, a strange, undeniable pull, a curiosity I couldn't suppress, tugged at me. "I appreciate the offer, Piper," I said, choosing my words carefully, my gaze darting away from hers. "But I actually have a boyfriend. Liam and I were quite busy." The words felt stiff, formal, even to my own ears. Piper's smile didn't waver. If anything, it deepened, a hint of challenge still dancing in her dark eyes. "Another time, then," she said, her voice warm and lingering, a promise rather than an acceptance of my refusal. Some invitations are worth repeating. And with that, she was gone, leaving me standing in the sterile exam room, the ghost of her touch still warm on my arm, her low voice echoing in my ears. I found myself replaying her words, her smiles, the way she had looked at me. Guilt, a heavy, unwelcome guest, settled in my stomach. Yet, beneath it, a tiny, rebellious spark flickered, a nascent curiosity about the woman who dared to challenge the boundaries of my quiet, ordered world. The jasmine and musk scent seemed to intensify, wrapping around me, a constant reminder of her unsettling, charming presence. Piper's visits to the clinic became a recurring theme, each one a subtle escalation in her campaign of polite yet persistent pursuit. Cleo, it seemed, developed a new ailment every other week, a phantom sneeze, a sudden loss of appetite that mysteriously vanished upon arrival, a need for a comfort checkup. Each time, Piper would arrive impeccably dressed, her eyes shining with that familiar, knowing glint. She'd bring small, thoughtful gifts, a rare orchid for the reception desk, a box of artisanal chocolates for the staff, and always a small, beautifully wrapped package addressed specifically to me. Inside, I'd find things like a handcrafted ceramic mug that perfectly fit my grip, a small, leather-bound journal, or a delicate silk scarf in a shade of emerald green that mirrored her dress from our second encounter. These weren't overt declarations, but rather intimate gestures, chosen with a keen understanding of my unspoken preferences. Each gift felt like a secret message, a quiet assertion of her attention, a gentle tightening of the silken thread she was weaving around me. "Just a little something," she'd say, her smile soft, her eyes never leaving mine, as I mumbled my thanks, feeling a blush creep up my neck. "I thought of you." I found myself increasingly distracted. During my quiet moments, my thoughts would drift to Piper, her laugh, the way her dark hair cascaded, the subtle scent that always preceded her. Liam, with his comfortable predictability, began to feel distant. Our evenings together, once a cherished routine, now seemed punctuated by an unsettling quietness, a space I hadn't noticed before, a space Piper's vibrant intensity seemed poised to fill. I would catch myself comparing his gentle affection to the electric current that ran through me whenever Piper was near. Shame would wash over me, swift and hot, yet it did little to quell the insistent whispers of her name in my mind. One unusually warm evening, a few weeks into this unsettling routine, I was the last to leave the clinic. The city hummed outside, a muffled symphony that felt strangely isolating. I locked the front door, the click echoing in the sudden silence, and turned to head to my car. And then I saw her. Piper was leaning against her sleek, dark car parked just a few spaces from mine. She was wearing a simple, dark-washed denim jacket over a plain white t-shirt, a casual look that somehow made her even more captivating. The streetlights cast a soft glow on her face, highlighting the sharp angles of her cheekbones and the dark pools of her eyes. She wasn't smiling, not exactly, but there was a quiet intensity in her gaze that made my breath hitch. "Piper?" I asked, my voice a mere whisper, surprise and a strange anticipation warring within me. "What are you doing here?" She pushed off the car, her movements fluid and unhurried, closing the distance between us. The air around us seemed to thicken, charged with an unspoken energy. "I was just passing by," she said, her voice a low murmur, belying the clear purpose in her eyes. "Thought I might catch you." My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum against my chest. This was it, the boundary she had been pushing, the line she was finally about to cross. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to retreat, to run to my car, to cling to the safety of my predictable life. But my feet remained rooted to the spot, held captive by her magnetic presence. She stopped just inches from me, so close I could feel the faint warmth radiating from her body, smell the intoxicating blend of jasmine and musk that had become synonymous with her. Her eyes, those deep, fathomless eyes, held mine, searching, daring. My gaze dropped to her lips, full and slightly parted. "Emerson," she whispered, my name a soft exhalation. And then, before I could process what was happening, before I could even formulate a thought, she leaned in. It was a slow, deliberate movement, giving me ample time to pull away, to protest. But I didn't. I froze, caught in the mesmerizing pull of her gaze, the sheer audacity of her presence. Her lips found mine, soft at first, a tentative press. It wasn't violent or aggressive, but rather a gentle, brief meeting. Her hand rose, resting lightly on my cheek, sending a faint shiver down my spine. The moment was over as quickly as it began, a silent question and a definitive statement, all at once. My mind screamed no, but my body, to my utter shame, stayed still, a reluctant acknowledgement of something unnameable. When she finally pulled back, it was slowly, reluctantly, her eyes still locked on mine, a silent question in their depths. My lips tingled, a ghostly sensation that lingered. My mind reeled, a whirlwind of confusion and intense, suffocating guilt. The world, which had felt so stable, so predictable just moments ago, now spun wildly off its axis, leaving me breathless and utterly disoriented. Liam's face, once a comfort, now felt like a painful accusation. My hand instinctively went to my lips, still feeling the ghost of hers, a forbidden touch that had awakened something I never knew existed. The kiss became a persistent memory, an undeniable presence that stayed with me. It was a moment that seared itself into my consciousness, replaying in an endless loop, the soft press of her lips, the unexpected surge of warmth that had washed over me. My mind, once a bastion of order and practicality, was now a chaotic battlefield where guilt and a raw, unnameable feeling waged war. I tried to push it away, to rationalize it as a momentary lapse, a foolish mistake fueled by surprise. But it clung to me, a pervasive scent, a persistent hum beneath the surface of my everyday life. Every mundane task at the clinic felt distant, viewed through a haze of Piper's dark eyes and the ghost of her touch. I'd be consulting a chart, and suddenly, her face would materialize, her smile, her whisper, that kiss. Shame would burn through me, but an equally potent thrill would follow, a dangerous, exhilarating sensation I couldn't quite extinguish. Then came the texts. At first, they were innocuous, playful. "Hope your day is treating you well, Dr. Emerson." Then they became bolder, laced with a subtle intimacy that hinted at our shared secret. "Still thinking about our little surprise encounter last night." She never explicitly mentioned the kiss, but her words were carefully chosen, always referring to our connection, the spark, the undeniable pull. Each message was a delicate thread, weaving its way deeper into my thoughts, pulling me further into her orbit. I tried to resist, to maintain the illusion of my steadfast loyalty to Liam. I left her messages unread for hours, crafted carefully neutral replies, citing my workload, my prior commitments. But Piper's persistence was a force of nature. She never pushed aggressively. Instead, she simply was a constant, alluring presence in my digital world. Her invitations came frequently, phrased as casual suggestions. Coffee sometime this week? My treat. Or there's a new exhibit at the gallery, thought you might like it. Always for just us. Always in settings that promised an intimate bubble, away from prying eyes. My resolve, once so sturdy, began to fray. The image of Liam, once a comforting anchor, now felt like a heavy chain. The guilt of my wandering thoughts and the forbidden kiss was a constant companion, but it was slowly, insidiously, being overshadowed by an almost desperate curiosity for Piper's attention. I started to notice how predictable my conversations with Liam had become, how the passion had settled into a comfortable routine. With Piper, everything felt alive, vibrant, dangerously exhilarating. One afternoon, after a particularly draining surgery, I found myself staring at Piper's latest text. "You look like you could use a break. Coffee? Just a quick one. My treat. No strings, just caffeine and good company." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. No strings. The words were a blatant lie, and we both knew it. But the thought of an hour, just 1 hour, away from the clinic, away from the gnawing guilt, and immersed in Piper's captivating world, was an unbearable temptation. My logical brain screamed no, but my heart, or perhaps something more primal, whispered yes. Okay, I typed the word, feeling both exhilarating and terrifying. Just coffee. 1 hour. Her reply was instantaneous. Perfect. See you in 30 at the daily grind. Look for the woman with a mischievous smile. My heart hammered against my ribs, a chaotic drumbeat of fear and excitement. I changed quickly, trying to calm the restlessness in my hands. As I walked to the cafe, a nervous energy buzzed beneath my skin. The moment I stepped inside, my eyes found her immediately. Piper was already seated at a small, secluded table in the corner, a cup of steaming coffee in front of her. She wore a simple, tailored blazer over a silk camisole, her dark hair falling softly around her shoulders. Her smile, as promised, was mischievous, a slow, knowing curve of her lips that made my stomach flutter. She gestured to the empty seat opposite her, her eyes, dark and fathomless, holding mine with an unwavering intensity. "Emerson," she murmured as I approached, her voice warm and lingering, sending a faint shiver down my spine. "I knew you'd come." I sat down, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, feeling the familiar blush creep up my neck. The air around us felt thick with unspoken things, charged with the memory of that kiss, a delicious torment that was both agonizing and utterly compelling. We ordered our coffees, the mundane act a thin veil over the electric current that hummed between us. As we talked, the conversation flowed with an ease that both comforted and alarmed me. We spoke of our work, our lives, our dreams, the surface-level chatter punctuated by Piper's lingering gaze, the subtle brush of her foot against mine under the table, the way her voice would drop to a near whisper when she spoke of something personal. Each gesture, each word, was a deliberate stroke, painting a picture of intimacy, drawing me deeper into the intricate web she was weaving. Her hand, as if by accident, brushed mine as she reached for her cup. This time, I didn't pull away immediately. Instead, my fingers, against my conscious will, lingered, feeling the warmth of her skin, the soft brush of her knuckles. A jolt, undeniable and potent, shot through me. It was a brief contact, yet it spoke volumes, confirming the dangerous pull that was rapidly becoming an irresistible force. I found myself wanting to lean in, to feel her closeness, to succumb to the promise in her eyes. The hours stretched, blurring the boundaries of time, leaving me perpetually wanting more. Our just coffee meetings at the daily grind became a frequent ritual, extending from quick breaks into languid hours that stretched unnoticed until the afternoon light began to fade. We delved into conversations that went far beyond casual pleasantries. We spoke of our childhoods, the books that shaped us, the quiet fears that kept us awake at night. I found myself sharing intimate details with Piper that I had never articulated to Liam, or anyone else for that matter. It was as if she held a key to a locked room within me, and with each shared story, another door creaked open. Piper listened intently, her dark eyes never leaving mine, her gaze conveying a profound understanding that felt both exhilarating and unnerving. She didn't interrupt or offer facile advice. She simply absorbed, her responses thoughtful, insightful, always making me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time. "You have such a deep well of compassion, Emerson," she'd say, her voice soft. "It's rare to find someone who cares so fiercely." Her words were a balm, an affirmation that resonated deeply within me, tapping into a part of my identity I had often felt was overlooked. Liam's love was a comfortable blanket, but Piper's attention was a magnifying glass, illuminating aspects of myself I hadn't realized were hidden. Subtly, insidiously, Piper began to highlight the emotional gaps in my relationship with Liam, not with direct criticism, but by simply filling them herself. When I'd mention a frustration with Liam's occasional emotional distance, Piper would respond with a knowing nod, then offer a profound insight into human connection, making me feel understood in a way Liam's practical reassurance never quite achieved. She never disparaged Liam, but her mere presence, her profound understanding, made his qualities seem less vibrant, less fulfilling in comparison. The contrast was stark and undeniably, painfully effective. The physical boundaries between us continued to blur, each meeting marking a new step in our unspoken dance of intimacy. A casual hand on my knee under the table when a shared joke made us laugh, a brief hug goodbye, fingers brushing accidentally as we reached for the sugar. Each touch was a spark, sending a faint tremor through me, igniting something slow and unnameable. My skin seemed more aware of her proximity, a feeling that was both terrifying and utterly compelling. The guilt, once a fierce, gnawing beast, began to recede, replaced by a strange sense of inevitability. I started actively hiding my meetings with Piper from Liam, fabricating excuses, weaving small, intricate lies that felt both shameful and strangely liberating. Each lie was a step further away from the life I had built with him, a step closer to the intoxicating unknown that Piper represented. One evening, after another extended coffee date that had ended with Piper's fingers brushing the sensitive skin on my wrist, I returned home to Liam. He was watching television, his presence familiar and comforting, yet suddenly alien. He greeted me with a warm smile, but I felt a chasm opening between us, a silent space filled with Piper's lingering scent, her captivating gaze, the electric current of her touch. He put his arm around me, pulling me closer, and I instinctively stiffened, the physical closeness feeling wrong, a betrayal of the nascent connection I shared with Piper. I wanted to tell him, to confess everything, to relieve myself of the crushing weight of the secret. But the words died in my throat, choked by fear and a strange, powerful protectiveness of what was growing between Piper and me. I looked at Liam, his kind, unsuspecting face, and a fresh wave of guilt washed over me. He deserved honesty, not this slow, insidious betrayal. But the thought of losing Piper, of extinguishing the vibrant, exhilarating spark she had ignited within me, was unbearable. It felt as though I was standing at the edge of a precipice, one foot firmly planted in my old life, the other hovering precariously over an abyss, drawn by the siren song of a woman who is slowly, meticulously, dismantling my world and rebuilding it around herself. The idea of Liam, once the center of my universe, now felt distant, almost a past life I was rapidly outgrowing. I was slipping, falling, and a dangerous part of me didn't want to be caught. The invitations from Piper grew bolder, less veiled by the pretense of coffee or an art exhibit. One evening, her text arrived, simple and direct. "Movie night at my place. No pressure, just good company and a cozy blanket. Unless you'd prefer otherwise." The unspoken implication hung heavy in the air, a silken cord tugging at something deep within me. My heart hammered against my ribs, a chaotic drumbeat of fear and a dangerous, undeniable eagerness. I knew exactly what otherwise meant, and a part of me, the part one was rapidly discovering, craved it with an intensity that both thrilled and terrified. My fingers hovered over the screen. Every instinct for self-preservation, for loyalty to Liam, screamed at me to decline. But the pull towards Piper was a tidal wave, too powerful to resist. I typed out a single word, "Okay." The affirmation felt like a plunge into icy water, exhilarating and shocking all at once. As I drove to Piper's apartment, the city lights blurred into streaks of color, mirroring the chaotic swirl of emotions inside me. My stomach fluttered with a nervous anticipation I hadn't felt in years, not since the awkward thrill of first dates. Tonight felt like a first date, but with stakes immeasurably higher. I was stepping over a line, irrevocably changing the course of my life, and a strange, wild freedom buzzed beneath my skin. Piper's apartment was a reflection of her, elegant, artful, with a curated sense of style that spoke of refined taste and a comfortable ease with intimacy. Soft, indirect lighting cast a warm glow, illuminating walls adorned with striking modern art. A low, bluesy melody drifted from hidden speakers, weaving a spell of sophisticated allure. The air was rich with the familiar, intoxicating scent of jasmine and musk, now intensified, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. She opened the door, dressed in a loose, silk dress the color of midnight. It fell gently over her frame, an understated elegance rather than a display. Her dark hair was loose, framing her face, her eyes holding that familiar, knowing glint, now softened with a tender warmth. "Emerson," she murmured, her voice a low purr, a smile playing on her lips. She stepped aside, her hand gently brushing my arm as I entered, a brief contact that sent a shiver through me. "Come in. Make yourself comfortable." The movie was a mere backdrop, a flickering image on a large screen that neither of us truly watched. We sat on a plush, oversized sofa, the cushions sinking around us. The conversation was laced with double meanings, heightened by the undeniable tension that thrummed between us. We spoke in hushed tones, our words becoming increasingly sparse, replaced by the silent language of lingering glances and subtle touches. Piper moved closer, her knee brushing mine, an electric current passing between us. My breath hitched in my throat. Her hand, warm and soft, found mine, her fingers slowly, deliberately, tracing the lines of my palm, sending a ripple of sensation up my arm. Her thumb brushed the sensitive skin of my wrist, a delicate movement that made my entire body feel more alert. Her gaze, dark and fathomless, locked onto mine, a silent command, an irresistible pull. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs. I felt a yearning so profound it ached, a hunger for something I hadn't even known I was missing. "Emerson," she whispered again, her voice barely audible, a soft exhalation of my name that felt like a secret shared between us. And then she leaned in. This time, there was no hesitation, no shock of surprise. My own response was quiet, a subtle lean forward, our lips meeting in a brief, soft moment. It was a meeting born of accumulated longing, of unspoken things, of weeks of simmering tension finally finding a voice. Her lips were soft, yielding, yet firm, a quiet assertion of connection. My hands stayed still, resting on my lap, a silent acknowledgement rather than a bold reach. The moment was brief, a gentle affirmation of a bond forged in stolen glances and whispered words. Her arm rested lightly on the back of the sofa, a subtle gesture of closeness, without overt contact. I felt the warmth of her presence, the subtle scent of her skin filling my senses. All coherent thought dissolved, replaced by a torrent of sensation, a dizzying rush of something new and unnameable. My mind screamed Liam's name, a fleeting, guilt-ridden whisper, but it was drowned out by the thunderous roar of my own awakening. Her proximity was a kind of light, illuminating parts of me I'd kept in shadow. Every nerve ending in my body felt more alive, more aware than ever before. A soft sound escaped me, a murmur of recognition, of understanding. My hands remained still, but my posture relaxed, a silent surrender to the moment. The world outside Piper's apartment ceased to exist. There was only her and me, and the raw, exhilarating discovery of a connection that felt both forbidden and utterly right. I was consumed, lost in the intensity of the moment, the wild, uncomplicated sense of being seen, truly seen, for the first time. The morning light, soft and hesitant, filtered through Piper's silk curtains, painting the room in hues of cream and gold. I lay on the sofa, a blanket draped over me, Piper seated nearby in an armchair, her presence a quiet, steady comfort. The initial intensity of the night before, a wild, exhilarating rush, slowly gave way to a complex tapestry of emotions. There was an undeniable sense of peace, a profound rightness in waking in her space, a feeling of finally aligning with a truth I had subconsciously suppressed for years. Yet beneath it all, a crushing wave of guilt, sharp and insistent, began to rise. Liam. His name echoed in the silent chambers of my mind, a painful accusation. I sat up slowly, not wanting to disturb the quiet. Her dark hair fell softly around her face, her expression serene, a soft, almost vulnerable beauty I hadn't seen before. I watched her for a moment, a fierce protectiveness swelling in my chest, a testament to the seismic shift that had occurred within me. But the warmth of her presence couldn't entirely quell the gnawing dread. I knew, with absolute certainty, that I could not continue living this double life. The lie had become a suffocating weight, an unbearable burden. My actions had consequences, and Liam, kind, steady Liam, deserved honesty, not this slow, insidious betrayal. I dressed quickly, my movements quiet, my mind racing. A note on Piper's table. Stay for breakfast. Or for longer. Always for longer. P. Her words, usually a source of thrill, now brought a fresh pang of conflicted emotions. I nodded at her in silent farewell, a promise to return, and slipped out of her apartment, the city just beginning to stir outside. The drive home was a blur. My apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt alien, imbued with the ghosts of a life I was rapidly shedding. Liam was already awake, making coffee, the familiar aroma a bitter comfort. He turned as I entered, his smile warm and genuine, and the sight of it twisted a knife in my gut. He was so unsuspecting, so good. "Morning, Em," he said, holding out a mug for me. "Slept in late." I took the mug, my hand trembling slightly. The words caught in my throat, heavy and leaden. My confession was clumsy, fumbled, punctuated by pauses filled with the clinking of ceramic and the distant hum of the refrigerator. I started with apologies, then moved to the vague, unbearable truth. I didn't mention Piper by name, couldn't bring myself to say it aloud, but the unspoken truth hung in the air between us, a thick, suffocating cloud. I spoke of feeling lost, of needing to find myself, of recognizing that our paths, once so perfectly aligned, had begun to diverge. Liam listened, his face slowly losing its warmth, replaced by a profound confusion, then a quiet, heartbreaking hurt. He didn't raise his voice, didn't accuse. Instead, his eyes, usually so clear, clouded with a pain that was almost unbearable to witness. "Emerson," he said, his voice flat, devoid of its usual warmth, "what are you saying?" I finally met his gaze, my own eyes filled with tears. I can't do this anymore, Liam. Not like this." The conversation continued, strained and punctuated by long, agonizing silences. It wasn't an angry breakup, but a quiet, devastating unraveling. There were no shouts, no accusations, just the slow, painful realization that what we had built, once so solid, was crumbling into dust. The finality of it hung heavy in the air, a silent testament to the wreckage I had wrought. When I finally walked out of that apartment, leaving behind years of shared memories, a part of me felt utterly broken, but another part, a smaller, more rebellious part, felt a strange, terrifying sense of liberation. The initial pain of ending things with Liam was sharp, a raw wound. But it was quickly, almost immediately, replaced by a sense of clarity, a profound understanding of what I had been sacrificing. The weight I had carried for weeks, months even, suddenly lifted, revealing a path I had only dared to glimpse. Piper, through it all, was a steady, unwavering presence. She didn't push or gloat. She simply was. Her texts were gentle, asking if I was okay, if I needed anything. Her calls were quiet, offering solace without demanding details. She came to my new, temporary apartment, bringing takeout and a comforting blanket, sitting beside me on the floor, her hand finding mine in a silent gesture of support. She didn't try to fill the void. She simply sat with me in the aftermath, her mere presence a quiet assurance that I wasn't alone. It was in these moments, amidst the wreckage of my old life, that our connection deepened, solidifying into something resilient and true. The storm had passed, and in its wake, a new world, uncertain yet vibrant, began to take shape around me, with Piper, my silent observer, my audacious catalyst, at its very core. The small, temporary apartment I found became more than just a place to sleep. It was a chrysalis, a space where I began the slow, sometimes painful, process of shedding my old skin. Every unpacked box, every blank wall, felt like an opportunity to redefine myself, to build a life that was truly my own, rather than one prescribed by expectation. Piper was a constant, gentle presence through this metamorphosis, never pushing, always supporting. She helped me pick out furniture, painted a wall with me, turning the sterile space into something warm and inviting. I started to explore who Emerson truly was, beyond the dedicated vet, beyond the girlfriend. I revisited old hobbies I had abandoned, like painting, rediscovering a creative spark I thought long extinguished. Piper, with her uninhibited spirit and boundless curiosity, encouraged me to embrace vulnerability, to confront the fears that had kept me comfortably contained for so long. She'd listen patiently as I wrestled with the lingering guilt from my breakup with Liam, offering empathy without judgment, reminding me that self-discovery, though messy, was a necessary journey. "It's okay to feel all of it, Emerson," she'd murmur, her fingers tracing soothing patterns on my arm. "The joy, the fear, the regret. It means you're alive, truly alive, for the first time." Our relationship, now openly acknowledged, blossomed into a vibrant, exhilarating partnership. We navigated the subtle societal judgments, the curious glances, the occasional awkward question from old acquaintances, with a shared defiance that only strengthened our bond. Piper's unwavering confidence was a shield and a guide, helping me to stand tall in my new truth. With her, I discovered a strength, a sense of self, and a profound clarity I never knew I possessed. Our connection, now freely acknowledged, became a language of its own, passionate in spirit, tender in action, and deeply affirming, a celebration of two souls finally finding their rhythm together. One crisp autumn evening, as the city lights twinkled like scattered diamonds, Piper and I sat on the balcony of my newly decorated apartment, mugs of steaming tea warming our hands. We talked for hours, not about the past, but about the future, about shared dreams and nascent plans. The air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke, but I felt a profound warmth spreading through me, emanating from Piper's presence beside me. I looked at her, her profile silhouetted against the cityscape, her dark eyes reflecting the distant lights. She had been the disruptive force, the audacious catalyst who had irrevocably altered the landscape of my life. She had meticulously, patiently, and sometimes ruthlessly dismantled my carefully constructed world, only to help me rebuild it, stronger and truer, around the core of my authentic self. I didn't hate her for the chaos she'd brought. I loved her for the liberation she had given me. "Remember that first day, at the clinic?" I mused, a soft smile playing on my lips. I was so flustered. Piper chuckled, a low, melodic sound. "I remember. You had no idea what was coming, did you?" Her eyes, dark and knowing, met mine, filled with a tender mischief. but I did. I saw it then. I leaned my head on her shoulder, feeling the comforting weight of her against me. The journey had been tumultuous, filled with internal struggles and external consequences. I had navigated the nuanced path from denial to acceptance, from fear to profound trust. But in Piper, I had found not just a partner, but a mirror that reflected the truest parts of myself, a catalyst for a healing I hadn't realized I needed. Our love, unconventional and fiercely passionate in spirit, had become a source of profound healing for me, mending the unseen wounds of a life lived not entirely for myself. My understanding of love had expanded beyond anything I could have imagined. It wasn't just comfort or predictability, it was also challenge, growth, raw honesty, and an exhilarating freedom. My heart, once constrained by expectation, felt unchained, soaring. I intertwined my fingers with hers, feeling the familiar warmth, the undeniable connection. The future stretched before us, unwritten, filled with possibilities. I didn't regret the messy, unconventional path I had taken. I only marveled at where it had led me, to Piper and, more importantly, to myself. This was my life now, vibrant and real, and with Piper by my side, I knew I was finally, truly home.